So today's speaker we have with us is a volunteer here in the park, Tom McNichol. Tom is going to talk to us about some of these people that were in the Revolution that a lot of us know about and know the name, but then after the Revolution, maybe we didn't hear too much about them. So he's going to talk a little bit about what happened to some of those people. Sir?
Bruce, thank you. Yes, I think it's appropriate that we hold this particular session as the last of the summer outing, so to speak, because we are going to be talking about sort of life after the Revolution to some of the, we'll say, lesser-known individuals, not the Washingtons or the Adams or the Jeffersons, who history has more than adequately encompassed with their writings. But we're going to be talking about a handful of people on both sides. When we read a novel or see a movie or see a play, and we see the characters that go across the screen, we really don't pay too much attention to them because we know basically they're imaginary. They only appear for whatever reason that the need of the novel or the movie happens to require. And then history, we often, when we read history, unfortunately make the same mistake. We see the name of the individual on a piece of paper in the history book, but we don't really think about the fact that they're like you and I. They had lives before the Revolution. They did something during the Revolution that obviously draws the attention of historians. But more than that, they had lives afterwards. Some of the heroes that we think that we had during the Revolution, if you read more deeply into their history after the war, turned out to be not too nice a piece of people. Some of them were lousy individuals during the war, and fortunately for them, they had a fine post-war career. And some of the people that you would like to think a lot of nice things would happen to, unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. So we thought we would take a few of these people by name and go over them with you and give you an idea of exactly how they turned out as far as that's concerned. And we'll start with the first one you probably always see in your history books, because it's Ethan Allen. And just to refresh your memories, the Ethan Allen, the Green Mountain Boys, and they were the ones that captured Fort Ticonderoga by knocking on the door and waking up the janitor, so to speak, and moving in. Actually, what happened, Ethan Allen was contacted by the people in Vermont and was commissioned with going to Fort Ticonderoga. At the same time, the legislature in Connecticut tapped somebody else for the job, Benedict Arnold. And they sent Benedict Arnold to Fort Ticonderoga at the same time. And the two of them meet outside the gates of Fort Ticonderoga, and they start to, what, fight the British? No, sir. They start to argue who's in charge. The funny part was that Arnold was in such a hurry, he forgot to bring his sword. He took second in command. And so they knock on the door of Fort Ticonderoga and capture it, but by pure luck, Ethan Allen gets the credit for it because he's first in command. That's all you ever hear from Ethan Allen in the history books. 1 month later, he's not only no longer the head of the Green Mountain Boys, they throw him out of the company. Actually, vote him out. Election of officers generally was by popularity. He evidently was not popular with the troops, so he was voted out. Now here he is, a hero without a command. So he thinks about what he's going to do, and he joins General Montgomery's invasion of Canada. Montgomery takes him in as second in command, tells him, don't do anything rash, we'll start this attack tomorrow. But he can't wait. So he leads his men, his group of men, the night before, attacks Montreal, and is captured. And the British find out who he is, and they put him in chains, and they take him back to England as a prisoner of war. And one day they say to him, all right, you're being exchanged. Well, being exchanged for a colonel in the British Army who had been captured in America, so they make the switch. Ethan Allen comes back to the United States, and he's looking around for a command. And this is the time in 1777-78 when Washington is here at Valley Forge. So he says, well, okay, now I'll go to George Washington, and I'll get a command from Washington. So he comes here, right in Valley Forge. Doesn't stay in Valley Forge, stays with his brother Ira, who had a home off of Audubon Road, right here in Audubon, PA. In fact, there's a plaque there that's to Ira Allen, and indicates the general location of where Allen's home was. And he meets with era and then heads into Valley Forge to talk to General Washington and wants a command. By this time, however, he is suspected of being too friendly with the British. So Washington, of course, shrewdly says, well, I think you'd do better if you went back to Vermont and got a command, and you can be more effective there because they know you better. So disappointedly, he goes back to Vermont, and sure enough, they make him a brigadier general of Vermont troops. Now, in those days, the borders between New York, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts were very unsettled. So there's always an ongoing battle as to just where the borders are. Allen decides that he's going to start correspondence with the British in order to offer them that he will take his troops and fight against the Americans in New York State with the proviso that if he's successful in New York State, then the British will make Vermont an independent colony of Great Britain. And correspondence goes back and forth to the General Haldimand, who is a general of the British Army in charge of Canada. But fortunately for Ethan Allen and his history, the war is over by the time that he's able to strike any kind of deal with the British in Canada. The correspondence gets lost. Allen settles down as a farmer up in the Lake Champlain area. He dies a peaceful death as a farmer. And all of a sudden, when the British general dies, his papers are handed over to the British authorities, and they come to light. And all the correspondence where Ethan Allen has agreed that he will turn over Vermont, all that comes to light. But by that time, Allen is dead. Fortunately for him, history only records his contribution at Fort Ticonderoga. So we would have probably gone around and been saying, instead of word for traitor is a Benedict Arnold, we would have probably been said earlier that the word for traitor was an Ethan Allen. But unfortunately for him, he never had to pay the price for his duplicity. So that's Ethan Allen. So there's a fellow who went from the penthouse to the outhouse, so to speak, but somehow or other was able to keep a reputation that history has guarded by virtue of the fact that all his duplicity didn't come to light until it was too late.